All right. Good morning or good afternoon, whenever you're watching this. It is I again, Mr. Arisola, and today we are going to get into South American sports. This is still going to be Unit 3A. Let's get it started. So South American sports, the learning objectives are going to be, today I will learn about the popular sports of South America so I can better understand South American athletic culture. I know I haven't when I'm able to tell my friends and family about the sports played in South America, particularly soccer, football, and football. I think we pronounce those the same way, but just spelled a little differently. The vocab word for today is just going to be one, favela. We have seen that in a previous lesson video this week, so be aware of that as it comes up in the PowerPoint today. And for our agenda, four things. One, popular sports in South America. Two, the very brief history of soccer. Three, soccer in South America. And then finally, how to play soccer. Yes, as you probably noticed, there is a big focus on soccer, and that is mainly because it is the most popular sport in South America. Okay, so first topic, popular sports. So not just soccer, football, or football. We also have here basketball, volleyball, field hockey, and then baseball. Now, the sort of fancy, or I guess you could say the formal or proper way to call or to actually say soccer or football is association football. Okay, football actually encompasses a whole lot of different sports. So gridiron football is probably the one that a lot of us here in the United States are most familiar with. That's American football. And there's also, I forget the name for rugby, but rugby does technically fall under the football sort of like umbrella term for those sports. Now, again, association football, soccer, football, the most popular sport in South America, followed by basketball. Now, basketball is, the Argentinians, the men's team or the national Argentina team, they actually won a gold medal, I believe, in the 2004 Summer Olympics. So if you're very familiar with like the San Antonio Spurs, Manu Ginobili here, as you can see in the picture, he's actually from Argentina. So he's probably the most famous or influential Argentinian basketball player here in the United States. I don't think he plays anymore. He retired, but he is from Argentina. You can actually see the Argentinian flag draped over his shoulder here. And he's also wearing the Spurs jersey. Now, the Brazil men's and women's basketball team, the national teams, they are also considered to be very good because they've won several world championships. Volleyball, so also a very popular sport in South America. In Brazil, it's actually the second most popular sport, right behind soccer. Field hockey, Argentinians are quite fond of this sport. I believe they've actually won, the national team has won two national titles or world titles. And then baseball. So funnily enough, Venezuela's most popular sport actually is not soccer. It is actually going to be baseball here in Venezuela. You can kind of see a similar thing in like around the areas of the Caribbean. So I believe Puerto Rico, other countries around the Caribbean, their most popular sport is soccer or football. But in Puerto Rico, it actually is going to be baseball. Okay, so Venezuela is kind of like Puerto Rico in that regard, at least for South America. And also, let me go ahead and move my screen here. This here is going to be Diego Maradona. So he is from Argentina, and he is was a soccer player. I think he's retired now, but he's still a coach. I think he coaches the Argentinian national team. But I won't talk too much about Maradona. He's considered one of the greatest soccer players of all time, kind of up there with like Pele. But I don't like to go too far into Maradona, especially because he's kind of riddled with controversy. So some of that just being drug use, and also there's allegations of him cheating. Like one of his most infamous goals was when he headed the ball into the goal. He actually hit the ball with his hand. So, in soccer, you can't touch the ball with your hand, so that would be considered a handball, but it was still counted, and his team ended up winning because of that goal. And so a lot of people really don't like him for that. And I believe the name, they've actually nicknamed that goal, they call it the Hand of God. Okay, so moving on to the history of soccer. So all these sports here are very popular in South America, but for this lesson in particular, we are going to be focusing on association football, or football as it's known in Latin America. So the history of soccer, go ahead and take a drink here. So the roots of soccer can actually be traced to ancient China, Greece, Rome, and Central America. Okay, so these are like these ancient sports such as Kuju in China, the Greek and Roman Harpastum, and the Native American, hopefully I can pronounce this right, Pasuquaquahog. Pasuquaquahog? Pasuquaquahog, I think is how you say that. So these are very loosely tied sports to soccer. So they have sort of like faint similarities, at least the historical records have shown. But it wasn't until England kind of came along around the 19th century when they actually are considered to be the ones that invented or made up the modern version of the sport, kind of like made the rule set for what we play today, if you play soccer. So again, 19th century, so that's about around the times of the early 1800s. It was invented in England, mostly in public, okay, quote unquote, public schools. So the reason I put that in parentheses is because you're probably familiar with, public schools in the United States where, it's kind of has, it's sort of like the most basic or standard version of schooling. But at least in 19th century England, public schools were actually more so related to like private schools. So you really had to pay a, kind of top dollar to actually get into those schools. So, soccer was actually considered to be a, or football as it was called in England, was considered to actually be sort of like rich person sport because you pretty much had to be like upper middle class or pretty much like rich, elite class to even get into these public schools or these private schools in England at the time where they actually started inventing soccer, coming up with the rules. Now you can actually notice in the background here, it isn't just like a random gathering of people. It's kind of hard to see behind the text, but there's actually a ball here. And these are all just people just playing soccer at the time. Okay, before it was, organized into an actual sport, it was considered a mob sport, as you can see in this bullet point here, where essentially it was just, everyone just kind of gathered around, there was a ball and people just started, just kind of kicking at it and just messing around with it. Okay, but it wasn't really organized. That's why they call it a mob sport. A mob is just like a bunch of people just kind of all kind of mashed together. But it was eventually organized into a sport that we are now familiar with today, and that was the English that came up with that. Next, soccer in South America. Okay, so let me go ahead and move my video here. Okay, so South American soccer, it was actually introduced during the 19th century, so pretty much around the time, a little bit after the time of when it was actually invented by the British. Some British immigrants actually did come over to South America, and they basically brought along with them soccer. And the South Americans that were there at the time, they were like, oh, you know what? Soccer is a new invention. It's kind of like this new fad sport. Also, it was made by like upper middle class rich people in England. We really like this sport. We really want to introduce it and kind of spread it throughout South America. And that's what ended up happening and why it's such a popular sport even today in South America. Now, it's played throughout the continent. And one of the things that I think really adds to the fact that soccer is the most played sport in South America is that it's very accessible. And what that means is that you really don't need a lot to actually play soccer. You essentially just need a ball. Okay, so a ball, maybe some people. You can really just do like for goals, I mean, you could just like use a chair, use just like two objects kind of like separated apart a little bit, and then the space in between them would be like, the goal. You really don't need a whole lot. Like for volleyball, you need like this long net. Basketball, you need the hoops. But for soccer, you really honestly just need just a ball, okay, and just some sort of like makeshift goal, and then just some people to play with. Okay, so very accessible, very easy to sort of prepare to play soccer. Now, Brazil you really can't talk about South American soccer without really talking about Brazil. You can actually see that in my video here. I have that flag in the background, the Brazilian flag. Now, Brazil is considered to be one of the greatest countries to ever play the game, like ever. Okay, they're actually 5 times World Cup champions. Their latest win was the 2002 World Cup in South Korea and Japan, and that was going to be in 2002. So some of the greatest players actually hail from Brazil, and those are going to be Pele, Ronaldinho, and then Ronaldo. So in the background here of this slide, we actually have Pele here in the middle. His heyday or his sort of his career tended to like the highlights of his career were pretty much around the 1960s, 1970s. He's retired now. Ronaldinho is going to be over here. He actually was considered to be one of the players to pretty much bring the 2002 World Cup for Brazil, mainly due to his very unique style of play, where it's very sort of flashy, sort of like people even describe it as a samba-like, the Brazilian dance. It's kind of like Ronaldinho took the traditional Brazilian dance and sort of transitioned it into his play style with a sort of like that sort of dance-like flair to it. And there's actually a video in today's photo that you can go ahead and check out some of his sweet moves. And then over here is going to be Ronaldo. So people get confused. There is another Ronaldo, but that is the Portuguese, from Portugal Ronaldo. That's Cristiano Ronaldo. And this is actually going to be Brazilian Ronaldo. I think Luis is his first name, or his second or last name. Anyway, so this is Brazilian Ronaldo, and he's also considered to be one of the greatest players from Brazil. Now, many South American people, okay, they live in poverty. We've discussed this in a previous slide, especially when we focus on Brazil. They live in poverty. A lot of them do in South America, and they tend to live in these areas known as favelas, okay? But especially given how influential and how popular soccer is, a lot of the youth in these favelas, in these slum areas, they see soccer as a way out, okay? So to my knowledge, if I'm accurate on his backstory, I do believe Ronaldinho actually did grow up in an area either in or around favelas or the slums in Brazil. And he now is considered, when I last checked his net worth, $9 million. So he is pretty much worth, his career is worth $9 million. And he came from almost nothing, from his youth. Like his family was very poor. His mother and father, I think his father was like a steel worker, but they didn't make a lot of money. But Ronaldinho really, kind of kept at his passion for soccer, and he ended up, becoming successful and eventually making the Brazilian national team. And, he brought the World Cup for them in 2002. Now, favela, again, your vocab word, is a very poor area on the outskirts of South American cities, especially in Brazil. Okay, they are also known as just like slum areas or the slums. Now, one of the big reasons there's a lot of reasons why favelas ended up becoming a thing, but sociologists believe that one of the big reasons that favelas ended up becoming a thing was because of this massive migration from the countryside or rural areas in areas of South America to cities, but there just really wasn't enough, one, there wasn't enough building space, and two, there just wasn't enough affordable housing for those people coming in. So they pretty much just sort of bled out into, sort of dissipated into the areas around the city, and they pretty much had to construct their own little areas that are now known as favelas. And favelas are technically illegal, okay, but there's just so many of them, and there's just so many people, in them. The South American government can't really do a whole lot. I mean, they are doing some things, but they can't just, outright just like, hey, you cannot be here, and just destroy the favelas. No, they can't do that. But favelas are technically illegal because they are not like sanctioned housing. Okay, moving on to how to play soccer. All right, so this is the part where we're going to go ahead and watch the WikiHow video of how to play soccer. It's not, it's like super in depth. I don't really think it goes over like the exact positions of soccer. Like there's a whole lot of bunch of intricate rules, but this is just sort of like a basic how to play soccer if you just like really are new to the game. All right, we'll go ahead and do that.
To play soccer, first you'll need two teams. The goal of the game is to score more points than the other team by kicking the ball into their net. In the official rules, each team has 11 players, and the game lasts for 90 minutes. To get started, assign positions to every player. Each team should have a goalie, defenders, midfielders, and strikers. If you're the goalie, your job is to stop the other team from scoring by blocking the ball from going into the net, and you are the only player on the field that can use your hands to do so. If you are a defender, you'll support the goalie by preventing the other team from taking on shots on goal. Additionally, try to steal the ball from the opposing team and pass it to your midfielders or strikers. When you're a midfielder, you want to get the ball toward the other team's net. You'll run up and down the field, helping on defense and on offense to get the ball to your strikers. Then, if you're a striker, it's your job to shoot the ball into the other team's net to score a point. When you're not playing a game, practice dribbling the ball down the field while running at different speeds, which will help you keep the ball in your team's possession during an actual game. You should also practice taking shots using a net or some cones so you're more ready to score the next time you play. Additionally, try asking a friend to practice with you so you can work on passing the ball back and forth.
Okay, so bringing it back to our learning objectives for today's lesson, what we did today, we learned about the popular sports of South America. Why? So we could better understand South American athletic culture, and hopefully, you learned something if you can go home, tell your friends and family about these sports played in South America with particular focus on football or soccer. Boom. Also, post-lesson activity. Okay, so virtual learners, there will be a discussion board post, and you need to address one of these 4 topics. Okay, so you should be typing up like 1 or 2 sentences, so not very long, but it does have to address one of these 4 things. So a new piece of info you learned today from this lesson, a personal connection you made to the South American sports lesson, like maybe family members in South America who are athletes, or maybe just someone in your family who plays one of these sports and you are familiar with the sport itself. So the next thing could also be something that really stuck out to you. Okay, so what really interested you in the lesson? What really interested you in this lesson? And then finally, a chin scratcher. Okay, chin scratcher. This one might actually be the most difficult one, but probably the best one in my opinion to go ahead and do, is asking a profound or a deep intellectual question about the lesson that you want to know the answer to, or maybe just something that you saw and you're like, I wonder if, and then you finish that thought there. Okay, but it has to be a profound, a deep question. All right, something that really makes you think, really makes you scratch your chin. All right. Now, for our face-to-face learners, so the people that are in class right now that are watching this video, we are going to be doing a soccer discussion circle, and we're going to get into the instructions for that in just a second, and they are located in the folders. So we're going to go ahead and go over those before we jump into our activity. All right, other than that, y'all have a great day and have fun with your discussion board and discussion circle activity. Bye-bye.